In a recent Akashic Record Insights program, a participant asked this question: how can I move past the discouragement and self-judgment I feel when I struggle to meet goals that fall between easy success and impossible challenge, especially in something I love like climbing? Here's the response I received from the Akashic Records.
So, first of all, what they want to do is say that they think that the basis of your problem there is perfectionism. And the form of perfectionism that you seem to have is the expectation that if you can think you can do it, you should be able to do it in one try. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. So what they think is that because they don't have any problems with the goals that you're setting.
It's not like they're like stupidly outlandish or anything.
No. And even if they are, so what? That's
Right.
not the problem, right? That's not the problem. The problem is the judgment you dash on yourself when you can't do it right the first time out of the gate. Even if you've watched a million whatever, read a million whatever, talked to a million whoever, right? Like whatever you do, you think you should do it right the first time. Whatever right is, perfect, whatever it is, you should do that, right? Like, because otherwise it's an expression. So what you go to is if you don't do it right to begin with, you're a failure and you'll never be able to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. And, like we know what a pile of bullshit that is, right? And I know
I
right?
do, and I've done so much training, and I'll try to reset and recenter and be grateful and connect with the rock and the things, and then that it's just that overwhelming sense of like discouragement. And I realize then that I also compare myself to others, and then I get even more discouraged. And like I know that I'm doing these things.
Yes. Well, okay, so here's the thing that's the difference between you having an outlandish goal and achieving it, and you having an outlandish goal and not achieving it, is that when you have it and you get it, it's because you've broken it down into steps. And when you get to a point where it doesn't work the way you think it should, instead of judging yourself, you say, so how can this work? Right? Is it that I need more core strength? Is it that I need a different pair of shoes? Whatever. I don't know in mountain climbing terms what that would be. But
those are very apt questions.
Okay, well, there we go. So, but it's how. Ask the question, how can I do this? So that you're not saying to yourself, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough to do this. I'm not, strong enough to do this. It's just, how can I get there? Right? Which might mean, okay, I need to go back down, look back up where I'm trying to climb, and think through this again. Right? Like sometimes the answer is simply, I just need to start over. And see, and like, okay, I did this step and now I do this step. Oh, look, that's where the trouble was, right? Like 3 steps before I should have gone left and I went right, right? Like that kind of, right? So then that way, what you're doing is you're tracking it as a solution system rather than just getting all wound up in judgment.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because then I would see possibility instead of just complete failure.
Yeah. And And then you also give yourself the opportunity to take in the knowing that's there. I mean, because, we tend to think that outlandish goals are outlandish because we can't. And what they're saying is that often
so we already have the idea that you can't.
Right. That somehow, like, yeah. And like they keep pointing me to what I went through learning how to hike when I lived in Oregon. I decided that I wanted to do what I could do to hike what was considered the hardest hike in the Columbia Gorge, which is Mount Defiance, which is hysterical that that's the name, but it's a 10-mile hike and 5,000 feet of elevation gain. And according to what I know about hiking, I mean, because that means you're going 1,000 feet up every mile. Wait, it was 5 miles up and 5,000 feet, right? Because it's a 10-mile hike altogether. So generally speaking, when you have more than 1,000 feet of elevation gain in a mile, you're climbing as opposed to hiking. So it's the steep, you're right. Oh, yeah. So, and I, was just a beginner hiker. So my question, so I went to my trainer and I said, because what I'd learned from my trainer was to ask the question, how? Like, not, can I do this? The question is, how can I do this? So I said, how can I climb Mount Defiance? So that's what I started working on. It's just like when I first started training, because there was a point in my life, back 12 years ago that I started training and I'd never been an athlete. And, my trainer, one day he's like, well, I want you to do 10 of those. And I said, I can't. He said, no, that's not the question. The question is, how can you? Because you can. So the question is always how. Which means some days the answer to getting to the outlandish thing is to back off and start over. But if you're so wound up in your perfectionism, then there's no way you'll ever do that. So then you'll just end up, whatever, hanging there on your rappel rope crying because you can't do whatever it is you wanted to do. Right? Seriously.
Oh yeah, I've spent way too many, I mean, like, it's,
yeah,
whatever.
Oh,
I guess it could say it's embarrassing, but I've kind of moved past that. I've done that a lot.
And sometimes the crying is exactly what you need to be doing. Because often when we do something physical, it's helping us work out whatever emotional, spiritual issue we're in the middle of. And so it's not that you shouldn't be crying. It's realizing that often in the crying, you're letting go of something that's holding you back.
Oh, so then instead of just judging oneself for crying and then adding more like, this is terrible, now you're even worse onto that, you could think about that you're letting something go.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, because the whole, because very, very clearly, you are bringing all of yourself to your life. That means everything you do is body, mind, heart, and soul. So that means that whenever you do anything, the effect will be body, mind, heart, and soul. So learning how to climb is going to be an emotional, spiritual experience as much as it's going to be a physical experience and a mental experience, right? Like it's everything. So often, I mean, crying is for a whole lot of people, including you and me, how you let go, right? Of whatever it is, or how you let deeper awareness show up so that it's not a wrong thing to do at all. It's very healthy, actually, because it's the way that you can process deep stuff. And in a lot of ways, that's why doing something physical is a good thing to do, because it will help things come up that, that, you know, because you're so involved in the physical thing you're doing, like how do you climb? You get so involved in the physical motion of that. The emotional, the mental, the spiritual parts of it now have a way to kind of come to the surface beyond your focused attention. So they come up because you're not paying attention, you're not trying to keep them down. And so they come bubbling up.
Yeah. Huh.
So that physical activity can very much be a way that you work out, you know, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, who you are. I mean, it's why we have yoga.
Right. Actually, right when you said that, I brought to mind like yoga, Kundalini, all that stuff where you're doing something that you're so focused that then people have these experiences, right? Because everything's coming out.
Yep.
Huh.
Tai Chi, all of it.
Yeah.
Hitting a heavy bag. I mean, whatever it is, you just name a physical something. I mean, it's why, like, for example, I love doing the dishes. It's because it's so meditative for me. And I get so involved in the physical thing. I have all kinds of awareness. Like I get all kinds of epiphanies and epiphanettes, you know, doing the dishes, or, you know, it's partly why I like to hike. So you're engaging the entirety of yourself in that, even though you may not be aware that that's what you're doing.
And maybe things that bubble up might just be things that need to be addressed, like perfectionism and discouragement and things. It's just they're just being allowed to come up. So it's things that to start looking into further. Because
yeah. And so it then becomes, when it bubbles up, the question is simply, is this where I stop? Right? Is this, not being able to do this, a reason for me to stop? I mean, because sometimes it's legitimate. Yes, this is where you stop. But sometimes it's like, oh, no. It's more important that I go on. So how can I do that? Right? Because perfectionism will say that it's never right to stop. If you have a goal, you should get to that goal. Where this is saying the goal is what gives you direction, but you don't want to get so wound up in that's the only possible destination that you then are, you know, beaten up on yourself because you're not getting there. Because see, that's the thing about some destinations are not meant to be gotten to. Which, you know, like for me, one of the funny things about that whole, you know, climb Mount Defiance, I actually never did it. Because the 3 times I planned to do it, each one of them for different reasons, it didn't work out, like legitimately didn't work out. Right. And I never got there. So I could beat up on myself or whatever. But the thing is that whole thing helped me focus on myself in a way that was what I needed in the moment. So sometimes it's not about getting to the destination. But perfectionism will make it very, very difficult for you to see that.
And even if you do get there, it pretty much always tells you that there's something wrong with your performance or how you got there, that it's not good enough, and whatever it is. I mean, it generally is very fleeting.
Yep.
If it says that you should be pleased with yourself at all.
Exactly. Right. So it's a continual, there is no way, you know, because perfectionism basically is going to deny you your ability to ever prove your worth. Because that's, I mean, a lot of perfectionism is all wound up in how do I prove I'm worthy? And, you know, again, the paradox is you can't prove it. You just experience your amazing worth in each moment. So you start to realize that all of those things that quote unquote you're not supposed to do if you're a good hiker or a good climber or whatever are the things that make you good at doing it. It's what helps you get up, to climb up or to get to wherever you want to go. And then that folds over into the whole rest of your life. Like you end up realizing that it's not a question of how do I do this perfectly? It's just simply in this moment, how do I get to what I'm going for? Like how, which is like how did I move to Vermont? It was just simply, okay, I would like to move to Vermont. So today in this moment, how do I do that? What do I do? So I'm focused on how rather than, thinking that there's some perfect road that's going to get me there. Did I deal with perfectionism along the way? Oh, hell yeah.
But you also, it seemed like you got, like you allowed that, like knowing that that's what you needed to do to go to do it, right? Like
yes.
Sometimes I feel that way. Like for another climbing example, I'll look at something and feel within like, oh, I should try, like not should, but that get on that and try that. And immediately my mind will come in and be like, no,
yes,
you shouldn't for this reason, that reason, like you're going to fall and break your ankle, whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like immediately it's like, no, but like you have that like knowing inside of like, oh no, like that would be.
But see, yeah. So, but the thing about that is essentially those are all different moments where the question is this where I stop? Is this where, okay, I mean, because sometimes you are having a good awareness. Like I did for me, I went through all of that in terms of, do I move back to Oregon, which I adore and love, or do I move to Vermont, which I like it. I spent some time there, but I don't really know. And am I really going to be able to deal with all that snow? But every time I worked through it and thought about it and checked into it and everything, the answer was no, don't go to Oregon, go to Vermont. So there was always then that point at which I was having to trust something that I didn't completely know. I didn't completely understand. And all of what I went through were just basically moments where I would say to myself, essentially, is this where I stop? Like, do I really want to, is Vermont really for me to do? And there were a couple of times, I mean, because I had a couple of false starts about this over, like about a 3-year period. I started into it and I got to a point where I'm like, no, I guess I can't. And I stopped. And I came back and no, I can't. And I stopped. And then pretty much it was the third time, right? Like, can I do this? Yes. Okay, I can do this part. Yeah, now I can do this part. Yeah, now I can do this part. And there were plenty of times where I got really irritated because I wasn't doing it, quote unquote, right? Like but the whole thing is about how you work through your process. So that's why the question is how? How do I do this?
Okay.
And to also realize discouragement won't go away. Because that's part of you emotionally processing your how. So it just becomes another thing. So how am I going to deal with this? I feel like shit. How do I do this? So sometimes the answer, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe recognizing it, but not allowing it to just completely take over your whole self. Just being like, okay, I see that. I feel it's there.
Yes.
But it's not just going to like take over everything. And
yeah. Or there's times where it does take over everything. And so, okay, now you got to, that's where your focus is. That's,
Okay.
Yeah. Because you have to, it's just like, okay, this is now shown up. I didn't anticipate it. But now I've got to put my attention here. So I'm going to take this part, put it to the side. There it is. It's going to wait for me. I'll deal with this. And then I'll know, when I've taken care of that, I'll come back and see if it's time for me to pick this back up and go forward with it. Right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
and in a whole lot of ways, that's what life is that ability to say, okay, what do I feel called to do? What's keeping me back from it? How do I envision answering that call? And you go along with it until something else calls you, and you have to then make a priority decision. Or can I do both of these at the same time? Or, whatever.
Or maybe, like you said, you don't necessarily we could all, have these sort of goals, but then the process of taking steps to get to them actually create other opportunities that you then end up spinning off to.
Yes.
And those end up being much whatever impactful or something in all of our lives. And when you look back and say, oh, well, I didn't, achieve this goal, but now look at what happened because I tried for it, and whatever capacities came out or abilities came out because of that.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for listening. This has been an episode of Akashic Records Insights. To join the next session, go to akashicrecordinsights.com.